NSFW, what is your most messed up first date experience? He messaged me on OKC, wasn't anywhere near my type, but he seemed like a cool person. So we talked a lot about his time in the Air Force, but not in any weird, obsessive way. I agreed to go out with him after a few days, and he picked me up from my house. Mistake number 1. We didn't make real plans beyond walking the pier at the beach, but he kept mentioning that he wished we could have gone to dinner, but he left his wallet. I had a little cash on me, but not enough for dinner for 2, and I really didn't like how he kept angling for me to buy him food and bumming cigs, while at the same time talking about how much money he saved from being in the Air Force and bragging about his car. So, I've long decided I'm not feeling this guy. Takes an uncomfortably long time to convince him to take me home. He just kept hugging me from behind, telling me to look at how pretty the ocean was. I guess he was trying to be romantic, but it was effing awkward. He finally drops me home, really aggressively leans in for a kiss with his mouth way too open, and then finally leaves. I'm thinking I'll talk with him the next day and let him know, hey, I'm not interested in going out again, since he really seemed to think that we hit it off. A couple hours later, I get a call from a number I don't know. It's this guy's coworker at Subway. He took my number from his phone so he could warn me about this guy and his lies about the Air Force. Because I just seemed like such a cool girl, and then he says, so I know this is really weird way to meet someone, but I think you're just really cool and maybe we could just meet up sometime and chill. What the F? I just hung up and never talked to the Air Force dude again. Just when you were getting all these red flags from the supposedly Air Force guy, you get a bunch more from his friend at Subway. Eat fresh. So you're telling me that in the same breath, his friend warns you about his friend's lies and the Air Force, and then proceeds to blind ask you out to chill. Apparently, this whole group of friends and coworkers are creepy and dysfunctional. And also, this may be an online dating / OKC thing. Just saying. Oh man, freshman in high school, first date ever, we went to a movie. My first warning sign was that he smelled like BO when he put his arm around me. He was just awkward and strange in general, but we didn't interact much because of the movie. His dad picked us up from the theater. The dude knew that the child window locks in the car were engaged and purposely farted to test me. I remember violently gagging, his dad unlocking the locks, and then never talking to that guy again after that evening. My first year of university, I got chatting with this guy in the cafeteria. We got on swimmingly, had a good laugh. He asked if I wanted to go for a coffee in the evening, which I agreed to. Just two guys hanging out, right? So we are sitting in this coffee shop on their big, comfortable sofas. Again, the conversation is flowing, blah, blah, blah. I do remember thinking it was a bit odd that he had his arm not around my shoulder, but resting along the back of the sofa, nearly around my shoulder. Never mind, I thought in my sweet, innocent way. So anyway, after a couple hours, he asked me if my parents are okay with it, if they know that I am out. Well, yes, I said. Obviously, I had to borrow the car, so of course they know that I'm out. No, he says. Out. And then suddenly it dawned on me. I was on a gay date. I was on a date with another man. A proper date. Well, obviously, I broke up with him. It's not you, it's me. And he was a bit upset, claimed I was leading him on and I must have known. But we've both moved on since. Still, an interesting first date. Well, yeah, that's a little awkward for sure, but to be fair, and would love to hear what you guys think in the comments, if a guy asks another guy to go for a coffee in the evening, is that suspicious of a date? I'm not saying that guys can't have coffee with other guys, but usually it's dudes who already know each other or having some sort of business meeting, so I can see the perspective from both sides. But in general, I think grabbing coffee has romantic implications most of the time. About 5 years ago, I asked this woman out from Plenty of Fish. We decided to meet up and have dinner at a Montana's. They had a damn good fajita selection at the time. Anyway, I show up and she looks significantly better than her photos. Now, I know this seems like a good thing, and it was. We really hit it off, and after chatting for about 4 hours, the restaurant closes. She says she's really enjoying the evening and wants it to continue. So she invited me back to her place to play some Super Mario. Now, as a pretty nerdy gamer dude, that's the best invitation I've ever received. After a little while, she excuses herself to the bathroom, and I tunnel vision the game and eventually realize she's been gone for about 30 minutes. This seems like a pretty long time to go to the bathroom unless there's some serious issues with dinner, or maybe she's putting on sexy lingerie. I decide to knock on the door. No answer. Okay, now this is concerning because it's her condo. It's not like she tried to ditch me in her condo. I would have just stayed and eaten all of her food if that was the case. So I break into the bathroom and find her passed out on the floor with a rubber band tied around her arm and an empty needle lying on the floor. Was invited over to a woman's house after a heavy night of drinking. We started tearing into each other's clothes the moment we walked in. Proceeded to the bedroom and went to town on each other, and she was quite the screamer. Come morning, I wake up to her then 4-year-old daughter entering the room asking, "Is Daddy home?" As it turns out, this woman was separated from her husband prior to filing for a divorce, screamed like mad during the dirty with her daughter in the next room, and was living at her in-laws' house. The second this woman rushed her daughter out of the room, I got dressed, crawled out of the first floor window in the bedroom, and ran like hell to my car without looking back. Never look back. And on the plus side, I managed to add and immediately scratch off a few things on my bucket list. I don't know if it counts as a first date, but I'll proceed. Went out drinking and ended up sleeping with one of my friend's friend. I had never met her before, and we were both pretty drunk when we met. A week after the fact, I took her out to dinner. Everything was going great through dinner. The restaurant we went to was near a big higher-end shopping center, so after dinner we decided to go to the shopping center and drink at the Cheesecake Factory bar. She tells me the friend I met her through is working at a store in the shopping center and we should go visit her. I say, sure. We go there and this girl starts trying on stuff via the common friend and takes it up to the counter. I walk up and our common friend looks at me and tells me, "That'll be $460. I'm like, what? I tell her I'm not paying for it, and the girl on the date tells me why I'm being so cheap. Me, the girl I banged, and our friend walk outside to talk about the situation. I let them talk and said, look, it was a pleasure. Find your own way home. Her house was 30 miles away from the mall, and I was the one driving. So I left her there and went out drinking with my buddies. Now, there is no way that these two girls didn't discuss this ahead of time and see if they could get this poor guy to pay for the items. What a scam. They think pretty highly of themselves and their intercourse abilities if they think a one-night stand is going to translate into $460 in free clothes. I applaud this guy for sticking to his guns and leaving that fraudulent scenario. It was mostly all right. I'd consider myself pretty awkward, so I've always had a lot of leniency for others who might be as well. Maybe he was shy too. They both seem to be having a good time. Well, the bill comes and he grabs it. He pauses for a moment without opening the sleeve and says, "I'll pay if I can shave your body." Now I was stunned, briefly. That's more of a second date proposition, right? But he takes my silence as, "I'm considering it. Please continue with more detail." I didn't have to do the dirty if I didn't want it. Whew. And he'd gladly pay cash for the less socially acceptable places to shave. He had eyebrows as an example, but really, the goal was to shave every hair off, head to toe. Excuse me? Oh, he has a shave fetish. Funny how that didn't come up until now. Thanks for clarifying. I paid my half and noped right out of there. A girl I had fancied for years and years finally got to asking her out and then got rejected. And no big deal, I moved on. But about 3 months later, I get a phone call in the middle of the night, and it was our local hospital. She was in there, tweaked out of her mind, and she had overdosed on something at our local corp, and in her messed up state, mine was the only number she could remember. I didn't want to see her, but I couldn't just leave her there, so I ended up sitting at the hospital with her as she laughed at things that nobody else could see and was obsessed with stroking my face. After hours and hours of this, she started to come down slightly when the doctor turned up and informed us that she was going to be put at a psych hold for 24 hours to make sure that she wasn't a harm to herself. The prospect of her parents and friends finding out scared her so much that she pleaded with me to help her break out, which I did. I went down to the other end of the ward she was staying on and hit as many of the nurse call buttons as I could find. And as soon as all the nurses were at the other end of the room, she bolted for the door and to my car. So I dropped her at home and made sure she was comfortable and asleep on her sofa with a puke bucket, and I went to sit in the comfy chairs across from her, and she just giggled, only half awake, and said, "That was one hell of a first date." Dated her for 2 years before she broke my heart. I wonder how this girl broke this guy's heart after 2 years. Was it another overdose situation where she ended up in the hospital again? This is a classic example of a poor guy who gets sucked into a relationship when he obviously cares for the girl far more than she cares back. I always feel for these guys who get strung along by girls when they are obviously head over heels. Not cool, girls. Not cool.